Hello. I'm gonna be reading some real life scary places that are haunted as well. There are real life scary places, and then there's real life ghost stories, and more bone scary stories from around the world. I'm going for this one because, and it is my book. I can tell you. The first one is going to be, The Horror of Berkeley Square. Yeah. Stories about haunted houses have been told for hundreds of years. Some hauntings are just a bunch of scary noises, footsteps, groans, cries, screams. In some cases, the ghosts play tricks. They might rearrange the furniture or play a musical instrument in the middle of the night. In other hauntings, the ghosts actually appear, sometimes as lights or as wisps, shadow-like shapes. There are hauntings that are so horrible that no one lives to tell what they looked or sounded like. This is a true one of the most famous hauntings in the world, the haunting of the House of Berkeley Square. Sir Robert Berkeley, or whoever, Sir Robert didn't believe in ghosts, and he certainly didn't believe in the horror of the house on Berkeley Square. After all, he was a knight, and this was the 19th century London. He had no time for nonsense. So he heard the stories that were going around. It was said that the most terrifying hauntings took place in one room of the house. So I just had to grab my drink. I have to move a bit. Sorry, you're books. I have books and I'm reading for you guys. Okay, I'm gonna continue. In fact, people say a young servant girl had gone mad after she spent the night there. After the fateful night, she was able to say only one phrase: "Don't let it touch me." She murmured over and over. The story had to be true. People said it had even been reported in the newspapers. There was also a story about two poor sailors. One found themselves with no place to stay one foggy night. They had stumbled upon the deserted house, and decided to sleep there. They built a fire in the fireplace and settled down for the night. When they heard a scratching and panting sound coming outside the walls, as if a wild animal was trying to get in, and then they saw it, a horrible ghost-like creature, not quite animal, not quite human. The thing snarled and scratched its sharp, bloody claws towards them. One of the sailors escaped through the window. From the street, he heard his friend scream again and again. He ran to find the police. When he returned with the authorities, there was no sign of his friend in the room. Finally, they found him on the back steps. His neck had been broken. On his face was a look of unspeakable horror. Poppycock! That's what Sir Robert said when he heard the stories about the house on Berkeley Square. He was eating dinner with a group of his friends when they kept telling more and more stories, each one more horrible than the one before. Sir Robert decided it was up to him to prove once and for all that there was no such things as haunted houses. Sorry, I just had to look. Okay, we're almost done. I might as well add 2. He would spend the night in the Berkeley Square house. He told his friends, in fact, he would spend the night in the very room where the servant girl had been driven to insanity. His friends begged him not to do it, but Sir Robert would not change his mind. Mr. Benson, the owner of the house, wasn't too excited about the idea, but Sir Robert convinced him that nothing would happen. Sir Robert said he would take his gun with him just in case. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And he would ask his friends to sleep in the room downstairs. They would be on hand to rescue him should he need it. So the plan was set in motion. Sir Robert, chuckling under his breath, headed up to the cursed room after a hearty dinner one night. Before he left, he assured his friends that if he saw anything at all, he would pull the cord beside his bed to ring a bell. Then he said, rolling his eyes, they could all come running and rescue him. Only 45 minutes later, something did happen. Sir Robert's friend heard the jangle of the bell throughout the halls. They headed towards the room, dreading what they might find there. As they ran up the stairs, an unearthly scream echoed through the halls. Then a lone gunshot rang out. They approached the room, thinking that Sir Robert had killed whatever was in the room. They were sure that he would finally solve the mystery of Berkeley Square horror. But what they found was something far different. Sir Robert laid sprawled across the bed. His eyes bulged from their socket in a look of terror. His mouth was wide open as if he had been trying to scream. Sir Robert was dead. The gun laid on the floor just below his limp hand. His friends gasped. The plan must have gone wrong. Someone must have killed Sir Robert with his own gun. But there was no gunshot wound anywhere on his body. Just a single gunshot hole in the wall surrounded by a perfectly circle of black soot. Sir Robert may have tried to shoot whoever or whatever was after him, but the sight he had must have frightened him to death. Today you can visit the House of Berkeley Square in London, England, if you dare. The house has been turned into a bookstore, and whatever was haunting its halls had apparently left. No hauntings or ghost sightings have been reported for 100 years. Okay, I forgot. These stories can be a little scary. The next one is, is the bridge, basically Emily's Bridge. The Terror of Emily's Bridge. Why do ghosts return to a certain place time and time again? Some spirits... Okay, you might actually know this place if you guys watch any of my videos. This place is haunted. I might actually do a video about Emily's Bridge, so keep that in mind in future videos. Some spirits may have to return to have their revenge on the living. Others might return to warn the living of some dangers, or to give them an important message. But perhaps the saddest hauntings of them all involved ghosts who have come back from the dead to search for their long-lost sweethearts the ghosts were somehow unable to be with while they were living. Powerful forces send them on their endless searches, forces that are sometimes too strong for the living to ignore. The stories that follow is based on several tales that are told about a haunted bridge in Stowe, Vermont. In all these tales, the ghost of Emily Smith searches desperately for her bridegroom, or groom basically, On the bridge, Emily weaves a powerful spell as she searches for her lost love. It is an ordinary bridge over an ordinary creek. Some people call the old covered bridge Goldbrick Brook Bridge. Others know it as the Hollows Bridge. But most of the locals of the small ski town of Stowe, Vermont, called it Emily's Bridge. And most of them swear that the ghost of Emily Smith has been haunting its dark passageway since the late 1800s. David Belton had heard stories about Emily's Bridge since he was a young boy, but he didn't believe any of them. There were those who said that Emily would chase people around or across the bridge. Some said that horses were spooked at the edge of the bridge and would not pass through. Still others claimed to hear moans or screams. Ghostly lights have been reported on the edge of the creek on either side of the bridge. David thought they were ridiculous stories. After all, Emily Smith had been dead for nearly 100 years. The bridge that bore her name was a rickety old covered bridge. Those are fucking fantastic bridges. I have one here in Wisconsin. Some people like to say Wisconsin. So yeah. Sorry, I had to make sure I drink. Okay. From another time, some of the townspeople claimed it was the oldest covered bridge in the country. Built in 1844, the bridge had a rich history. It was no wonder that people told stories about it. Even though David didn't believe the stories, he still didn't feel comfortable visiting the bridge at night. He wondered then why he had allowed his buddies to convince him to go to the bridge that first Saturday in April. The date was significant. According to his friends, that was the night that Emily Smith had died by jumping off the bridge that came to bear her name. David hadn't been able to come up with an excuse that didn't make him sound like a complete chicken, so he had agreed to go. And now he sat in his friend's old Volkswagen bus on the way to the bridge, listening to stories about the long-lost Emily Smith. They said she would stand up on her wedding day. One of his friends said her fiancé never showed up to the church. So she climbed on a horse, headed to the bridge, and then she and the horse both jumped off the bridge. "No, that's not how it goes," said another boy. "You're right about her being stood up at the altar, but she didn't mean to kill herself. She took off in a wagon at full speed, hoping to track the jerk down. Then when she reached the bridge, she was going too fast. She crashed off the bridge, wagon and all." "I heard it differently," a third friend said. "I heard that Emily's bridegroom, was killed on the bridge on the way to the some ceremony." Sorry. Kind of hard time. Learning disability. Yay. It was his wagon that crashed off the bridge. When Emily heard the news, she was so upset she rushed to the bridge and jumped off from the exact spot where his wagon had fallen. David shook his head. Crazy stories, he thought. This just shows how ghost stories can get out of hand. Whatever happened, her ghost still wears her wedding dress. They say she's still looking for a bridegroom. Maybe she'll find him tonight. Yeah, right, David chuckled. Like, I really believe this garbage. Then ahead, okay, 2 more pages left. In the clearing by the creek, he saw the bridge, an ordinary bridge. He assured himself, "Now let's cross it and get out of here." There was nothing unusual at the edge of the creek. No weird lights, no moans, no screams. As the wheels of the car rattled across the bridge, absolutely nothing unusual happened. The driver stopped the car in the middle of the bridge, pretending that it had stalled, but he didn't fool David or the rest of the guys. "See? No ghosts," David said. "I told you guys this was crazy." David stopped in mid-sentence. The car began shaking back and forth. All at once, the four boys reached for the locks on the door. The car kept shaking. First a gentle roll, then more violently. It was as if someone or something was trying to throw them off the bridge. The faces of David's companions turned a greenish shade. David himself felt his heart drop to his socks. Then David saw a face at the window. It appeared only for the briefest second, but it was clearly the face of a woman peering at him from beneath a bridal veil. David's heart began racing in terror. Suddenly, another feeling came over him, a feeling David couldn't quite describe. There was something about the look on the face of the ghostly apparition. It was a look of sorrow, painful sorrow. Her eyes flashing a deep green in the darkness, revealing intense longing. Even in his brief moment of terror, David felt his heart go out to her. The look of grief was almost more than he could bear. It was the kind of sadness that drew him in, that made him want to comfort her. It was a look that actually made him think about opening his door and going to her. It's the strangest feeling David had ever had. Then he felt his hand reach for the door lock. David felt his body strangely pulled towards her. Then the shaking suddenly stopped, and the image of the ghostly bride faded behind the window glass. It was in David's head, begging her to stay, but the image had gone. David pulled his hand back and sighed with relief. The strangest, sweet sensation of longing of Emily Smith had passed. Did you? His body was stammering. "See her?" David said, trying to control his own voice. "Yeah, I saw her. Now let's get out of here." But David didn't want to say any more. His buddy started the car and floored it. The car practically shot out of Emily's bridge. When they reached the other side, they heard a sound that would ring forever in their ears. An unearthly scream, a woman's scream, echoed through the bridge, then a loud splash and heard from the creek below. It seemed that Emily had failed to find her groomsmen once again, and drowned her sorrows in the water of Gold Brook. Only David, the sweat beating down his brow, knew just how close he had come. I'm about to finish. I just need to get a drink. Emily's Bridge, located a couple miles north of the center of Stowey, Vermont. It is a great spot for a picnic on a warm summer's day. If you take a trip to Emily's Bridge, you'll want to head home long before nightfall. In the darkness, Emily still searches for her groom, and you wouldn't want to find yourself a victim of her irresistible charms. And that's about it. I'll probably read more if I get the chance. I hope you guys like it.